Scarbs, lots of good engineers, lots of facilities, lots of money at Aston Martin now. What have they produced for 2023?
Well, they've produced, for me, potentially one of the most changed cars on the grid. And that's kind of good and bad in some respects. You know, they came from a long way back last year. In fact, they had a far more successful season in the end than it looked like they were going to have when they first went testing. And the car really has grabbed the best concept from up and down the grid, as have many other teams, to be fair. But I think they've applied them in a way that's quite interesting. So again, you know, overall layout of the car is following a fairly consistent pattern we've seen with the rest of the cars. They've changed the nose. The nose looks a little bit lower. If you remember last year, it looked really raised in the middle. They've lowered it. They've made a lot more downforce in the middle of the wing and the areas just inboard of the front tires. That's all quite interesting. And then it all flows back quite naturally. Then we come to the side pods, which at this stage, until we can start to see the underneath of the car, is the biggest differentiator that we can really make out. And they've taken influences from everywhere, really. You know, there's a bit of Red Bull in there, there's a bit of Ferrari, and some of their own philosophies. And what you have is, from the inlets, then you then have this sculpted, ridged side pod. But rather than that just being a shoulder that ends as it starts to go into the Coke bottle, that ridged shoulder goes all the way down to the diffuser. So what they're doing is they're building this airflow up that goes down the ramp of the side pod, constrained by this shoulder all the way down to the diffuser. Now, that looks really cool. It's really interesting from my point of view, as looking at, is that going to work? Historically, when you have people really trying to guide airflow over large lengths of the car, it doesn't tend to work, and I wouldn't be surprised if that gets tweaked over the season. But it just shows that they're really working very hard to get that side pod airflow over the top and around the sides down to the diffuser and the beam wing, which is kind of the real area that helps produce the downforce from the underfloor. So that's all really interesting. Lots of other little tweaks, up and down the car. They've changed the roll hoop shape quite significantly. It's quite interesting looking. It's that sort of slightly squared off shape with a very sharp V-shaped central structure in the middle. So overall, I mean, they've really worked quite hard on that car to bring it up to what a 2023 car should look like, rather than something that's been copied from a 2022 car. So, it looks good. They've obviously got the right people on board there as well. So fingers crossed that brings them into the area where they're spending, and the investment and their potential should bring them.
Extravagant era that you just described, did that involve a lot of repackaging as well inside the car?
It will have some repackaging, certainly where you put the side impact structures coming out the side of the cockpit, which would be the key thing. But also to the flanks of the monocoque, so the bit that runs along the side of the cockpit and on the side of the fuel tank. So most people have now brought the inlets onto the side of the monocoque, and then the undercut underneath is literally the bare monocoque. There's no gap between the side pod bodywork and the structure of the car. So tight is the bodywork under there now. So you've had to repackage electronics and hydraulics and cooling. And that's a big job. They did up part of that job through the season last year, but certainly when you see that level of reconstruction to the car's design, that's where you start to see your fixed budget get eaten up, because everything you have to change costs you money, and every hour in the wind tunnel uses up your aero testing restriction allocation. So the question will be is, have Aston Martin left enough in the pot to keep the development going through the year? They seem to be a wise bunch of people, so I wouldn't be surprised if they have. But if we think back to their days as Force India, it was something of a problem of theirs of maintaining development through the season. So we'll see if the team have improved in that respect as the year progresses.